Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Scale Smart podcast. I'm your host, Jacob, and also the founder of NetScale Growth. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Marcus Whittingham, the founder of SentryBay. Marcus, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, Marcus, before we get into the flow of the podcast, I want to understand a little bit more about your experience, what actually made you found the company, and what you guys do as well.
Yeah, sure. Look, I started off as a management consultant working for all sorts of different areas. And then I got really interested in IT and tech and could see where the future was going. And I was working with another guy who came up with a great idea, and we sort of collaborated on that idea, and bang, we started our own cybersecurity company. And that was from Auckland, New Zealand. But then we managed to take it to London and take it global. It was started in my mate's garage.
Oh, amazing. And I speak to a lot of people who are like basement founded, garage founded, bedroom founded companies, right? And I think it's really inspiring people who manage to grow big companies from like their garage, their basement. So what made you kind of go from being there to being where you are now? Like what are some actions you took to get to where you are now?
Yeah, I think the first thing was that we kind of realized we need a bit of help, and we joined an accelerator, the top accelerator in New Zealand. We had to pitch to get in there. It was quite competitive, but in doing so, then we got surrounded by companies such as HP and Microsoft, Boston Consulting Group, and we could sort of get mentored by them, plus the people that run the accelerator. And that's what actually helped us build up and get our first round of capital. And then through that was what enabled us to then sort of grow the business to the next stage. And then eventually we needed to spread our wings because it was difficult to build a global company from New Zealand. So we then had to take the plunge, and we worked with UK Trade and Enterprise, and they found us in New Zealand and helped support us to bring us over to the UK and to London. So that was sort of another critical step to get there. And doing so, they introduced us to some funders. And again, it's so common with a cybersecurity business or any IT business, you need the funding, you need that growth to be able to take the next step. So we took the plunge with moving our families overseas, and then got some funding, and then basically, took it from there.
So you took a massive risk. And I think
Massive risk. We left everything behind and came over and said, look, we're going to make it here, or we're going to make it nowhere. And it kind of forced us to make it, I guess. But also we had so many twists and turns along the road. I remember where we had a deal with IBM to take us to all of Southern Europe, and then the financial crisis hit, and then all of a sudden they had a change of strategy, and 2 years of work went down the drain, and all the IBM work disappeared. And suddenly we were left with our products and no route to market. And we had to pivot and find a way where we made money for banks by them selling it to their customers rather than them investing in that to get a ROI, because banks had no money to spend. So, we had pivoted and created a series of identity theft prevention products mirroring the sort of things that was happening in the States. And ID theft protection for individuals is now a massive area globally. And we were part of that. Oh, it must be about 15 years ago now. But that was a massive pivot that if we hadn't have done it, we wouldn't have survived. And then eventually it funded us to go back into enterprise and build the enterprise solutions, which are now our flagship product.
And SentryBay protects over 5 million users now and operates across North America and also operates across Europe. So what would you say, aside from the biggest risk that you took, right, what would you say were the toughest challenges you had when scaling the company into what it is now?
I talked about getting investment twice, but they weren't large amounts of investment, and we were always short of money to grow. And partly because we got the wrong investors. So we got investors, but we didn't get ones that understood how tech businesses grow, and the fact that really you need one round of capital, then you need another round of capital, perhaps bringing in some other investors, and then another one. They didn't want to play that game. So we constantly had to fund ourselves out of cash flow. And that meant having to be so judicious in what sales and marketing activities we did, which actually hamstrung the company's growth. So one of the key things we did was was develop a whole bunch of partnering strategies, which enabled us to leverage other companies' resources to get to market and then to deliver the product. And it was those sorts of partnering strategies, both on the B2B2C with the consumer products, but also on the enterprise products, which was really the key to getting success. And one of the things that we did was we realized that some of the tech on the enterprise side, particularly early on, was very deep, but quite narrow, if you know what I mean. It was super technical, but it didn't have a wide breadth of implementation. So in doing so, we ended up licensing that to a large US software company and making a lot of money through licensing that tech so that it became a feature of their product. And to this day, the company was Citrix, and app protection is one of their key features of the Citrix VDI system, and that's our technology. So, it's gone global through our efforts, but it's also gone global because it's been, we've licensed the tech and used partners to distribute it globally.
And with competitors in the traditional EDR, XDR, and emerging AI-driven malware solutions, how are you guys differentiating in such a crowded endpoint security space?
In a simplistic way, a lot of those technologies looking to identify the bad guys and stop them from executing or doing the damage and the like. We always felt that you could never stop the bad guys. So we were actually one of the pioneers of zero trust philosophy of you have to assume everything is infected and deal with it from that perspective. And because of that, what we did is we just protected the data. So we ensured that if bad guys got into a PC or a laptop or whatever, they got no data or false data that we fed them, but not the real data. So we thwarted them that because they couldn't steal what they were looking for. That philosophy, that different paradigm of which is now a more common to have a proactive approach to security, et cetera. And a lot of people talk about having a proactive approach, but the reality is true proactivity has nothing to do with them with finding the bad guys. It's just making sure that they can't get what they want. They're thwarted at every angle. And that's what made us different. And it still makes us different today. There are other approaches to try to take a proactive approach, but we've still got the best anti-key locking technology in the world, even after all these years. And that's why it's still in demand.
And Marcus, you've frequently spoken about and highlighted about AI-powered malware. So how is AI both a threat and an enabler for you guys at SentryBay? And how are you leveraging AI defensively within
I
your
think
product?
if you go back a step, it's sort of 10 odd years ago, virus kits got invented. And that was a way for virus writers to more simply write malware. Well, if you look at it from an AI perspective, what you can do to AI now is you don't even need to write code. You can actually use an LLM and give it the right instructions, and it will come back with the code that will be a very effective malware. So it's made it so simple that the barrier to entry to writing malware and even pointing it to an individual company is so low that it's so easy to do that the proliferation is huge. So what it means, and it's a couple of things. Some of the technologies that have been in use for some time going to become more redundant, and a new breed of technologies will come in and take over, and people will be the companies will be in this quandary of, do I keep some of my legacy products, or do I completely switch them out, or do I just add another layer? Security is often about adding layers, but how many layers can you put on, and how many vendors can you work with? So I think that is becoming a real problem. When AI it was talking about writing code for malware, you can also use it to write defensive code. So, our developers are getting quite expert in trying to find the absolute neatest, tightest, most secure way of writing code, and sometimes using AI to write that defensive code against the attacking code. So that's something that we're doing. And obviously it helps us a lot with our research to be able to find out exactly what is going on, what could be coming, et cetera, et cetera. So we use it in that way. But at the end of the day, you still need to have the right strategy in place and right techniques in place to be able to defend against these sorts of attacks. And it's getting harder and harder. And I think one of the other things that we have to bear in mind too is that as we move forward, companies don't want to work with too many vendors. So I think, we talk about the technology, but I think the route to market's going to change as well, because I think that there's always been an amalgamation, particularly in the last 5 years, lots of security companies getting bought up, the technology being built into something else, et cetera, because companies cannot keep up with the various pieces of technology, which are best done by the individual small companies that create them. They would rather deal with a Palo Alto or a Semantic that might have the answers to everything, even if it's not all the optimal answers. But what it's now driving is it's driving real competitiveness to get those right bits of technology, to integrate them well, so that one of the bigger vendors can actually have enough of the solutions. Trouble is, they still can't move quick enough. And it's still the smaller vendors who are developing the most innovative things, particularly when the speed of danger, if you like, and AI and all these other bits of technology is growing so fast. And then you've got quantum computing, which is going to throw a major issue into this, because it will allow people to create, defend, crack encryption, do all sorts of things, and actually find new holes that previously weren't there, because you've now got the computing strength to crunch through and get an answer. So you're now going to have that coming in, and that means that there's going to need to be a breed of technology that deals with those types of threats as well.
And I want to go back to like what we was talking about at the start, Marcus, about the risks that you took. People want the world, but they aren't willing to take risks for it. And a lot of, let's say, videos I watch and founders, CEOs who I speak to, they're all in the position that they're in is because they took the biggest risks. And the people who don't take the biggest risks are still in the same situation, or they want to grow by 20%, but they're not investing a few thousand in some marketing that might make them grow by 20%, or they want to do X, Y, and Z. They want to adopt AI, but they know they're going to get left behind, but they're scared to invest the money. And it's like, where is there a point where you pull the trigger and take that risk? And obviously, the risk that you took was huge. You relocated your whole family pretty much, so you was in a position where it had to work. And I think they're the most scariest, but I think they're the best risks to take, because when there's no other option than success, and failure isn't an option, you're always going to succeed no matter what. Even if SentryBay didn't work out, you would have found something else to make it work.
Would have probably learnt from that, because I think, you learn from your failures more than you learn from your successes. So it's okay to fail. And I think we should congratulate failure if you get yourself up off that failure bench and create a success on the back of it.
Yeah.
And, I look at SentryBay and I think, yes, it's been an overall success, but it's been more of a success for some investors than others. It's been more of a success for some people than others. And I feel like it could have gone a lot better. So I know, and that's the perfectionist in me, of course, as well. But likewise, it's had its ups, it's had its downs. It's been really tough. But I've learned from that all the way. And I think that's one aspect. But I would suggest one thing. I think taking risks is important, but I think that you can be smart about the calculation of those risks. And I think getting the right experienced advice earlier on, I think would have helped us not to take that risk, but to execute the risk that had been taken better.
Yeah.
And I think we would have got to where we got to quicker and better and faster with better support. And that would have come in 2 years. I think investing in some advisors earlier on that we could have taken would have helped. I think getting the right investor earlier on would have helped, because some of that should come from the investor. They should have been there, done that, and they should be able to then put you onto their network. I came from New Zealand and I didn't have a network, and it was tough to create a global company with no network, personal network. So I needed more advice and help than what I got. And some of that's down to me. I should have created that a bit more. but some of it is that the investors and the like didn't do their job to make it as easy as possible, so that the risks that it was taking had the best chance of success. So I think a lot of people talk about the technology and the product. I think what's missing a lot is getting that go to market strategy right. And that's something that I'm actually, post SentryBay, and I only work part time for SentryBay now. I work with helping a lot of other companies succeed. It's a lot of it is just getting that right strategy to take your product to market, then message it right, then, get the product market fit. But then from there, it's not about the product. It's just about getting the positioning and the right strategy to take it to market a lot of the time. And that's the difference between success and failure a lot, not whether you've got a great product or not.
Yeah, 100%. And Marcus, what are some of the goals you've got for SentryBay over the next 6 to 12 months or so in terms of growing the company, expanding?
Yeah, look, they've just got a great relationship with iGel. Signed a big deal with them, and I think there's some real opportunities there to collaborate in the marketplace. And that they've got a very similar security paradigm and thinking, and the way that they do with their thin clients and like. I think and their OS, it's great. And so there's other partnerships like that. I think that could have synergistic properties, and I think that, partnering has been one of the biggest things for SentryBay, and I think it will continue to be so. And who knows what the future will hold, but I think that growing those partnerships and leveraging those good sized partners and making sure that you're continuing to provide benefits and meet the needs that they have in the marketplace, that's what a good partner does. It doesn't just say, hey, this is what we're trying to do for us. This is what we can do for you. And I think SentryBay has that philosophy, and I think that's why we've always been a good partner and had a lot of successful partnerships.
Amazing. Well, Marcus, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
No problem. Good to meet you.
Thank you.
Cheers.